The bell above the door chimed softly as Robert pushed it open, holding his 8-year-old son Lucas's hand gently but firmly. It was 9:15 on a Saturday morning, exactly the same time they arrived every week for the past 14 months. Lucas needed routines like other kids needed toys. They made his world feel safe and predictable. "Table 7 is ready for you, Mr. Chen," called Maya from behind the counter, already reaching for the coffee pot. She had memorized their order months ago, just like she had learned that Lucas preferred the booth by the window, where he could watch cars drive past in perfect, organized lines. Robert smiled and nodded his thanks. At 34, he had built a successful software company from nothing, turning late-night coding sessions into a business worth millions. But none of his achievements felt as important as these Saturday morning breakfasts with his son. After Lucas's mother had left 3 years ago, unable to handle their son's autism diagnosis, these weekly traditions had become the anchor that held their small family together. Lucas slid into his usual spot, immediately beginning his familiar ritual. First, he lined up the sugar packets in perfect rows of 3. Then he arranged the salt and pepper shakers so they faced each other exactly. Finally, he folded his napkin into a precise triangle and placed it to his left. Robert watched this routine with the patience of a man who had learned that fighting his son's need for order only made both their lives harder. Maya appeared at their table with Robert's black coffee and Lucas's chocolate milk with exactly 2 ice cubes, no more no less. "Good morning, Lucas," she said warmly. "How are you feeling today?" Most people talked to Robert about Lucas as if his son wasn't sitting right there. But Maya had always spoken directly to the boy, even though his responses were often just nods or happy sounds rather than words. Lucas looked up at her and smiled, making a soft humming noise that Robert had learned meant he was content. Maya smiled back as if this was the most normal conversation in the world. "I see you're wearing your favorite blue shirt today," she continued. "It matches your eyes perfectly." Robert felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the mixture of gratitude and protectiveness that came whenever someone showed his son genuine kindness. In boardrooms, he commanded respect without effort. But in moments like these, he was just a father hoping the world would be gentle with his child. The diner wasn't much to look at. The red vinyl booths had seen better decades, and the checkered floor tiles were worn smooth from years of foot traffic. The menu hadn't changed since the 1980s, and the coffee was nothing special. But it had something money couldn't buy: staff who treated Lucas like any other customer without stares or whispered comments. "The usual today?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Lucas always ordered chocolate chip pancakes with the berries on the side, never touching the pancakes. Robert always had scrambled eggs, wheat toast, and bacon. Lucas nodded enthusiastically, then began his pre-meal routine of arranging his silverware. Fork on the left, knife and spoon on the right, all perfectly parallel. Other customers had learned to expect this weekly show, and most had grown fond of the quiet boy who brought such serious attention to organization. Robert sipped his coffee and watched his son, thinking about how much their lives had changed. Before the diagnosis, he had dreams of teaching Lucas to play baseball, helping with homework, having long conversations about everything and nothing. Those dreams had been replaced with different ones, smaller but no less precious. Like the hope that Lucas would find friends who accepted him, like the wish that his son would always feel safe expressing his joy, even when that joy looked different from other children's. "He's getting so tall," Maya observed as she refilled Robert's cup. "I swear he's grown 2 inches since Christmas." "The pediatrician says he's right on track," Robert replied, then caught himself. He had learned to share these normal parenting moments when they came, even though most of Lucas's medical appointments were with specialists rather than regular doctors. Maya had been working at the diner for over a year now, always taking double shifts on weekends. Robert had pieced together bits of her story through their brief conversations. She was 24, putting herself through nursing school, and lived in a tiny apartment across town. Her car was older than she was, and some mornings she arrived on the city bus, her nursing textbook stuffed into a worn backpack. What impressed Robert most was how naturally she interacted with Lucas. She never treated him like he was broken or different in a bad way. She had somehow figured out that he loved routine, preferred quiet voices, and got overwhelmed when too many people talked to him at once. She had never asked about his diagnosis or made Robert explain anything. She simply paid attention and adjusted accordingly. The pancakes arrived, golden and perfect, with exactly 6 chocolate chips visible on top. Lucas had learned to count them each week. The berries were in a separate small bowl, just the way he needed them. Maya had even remembered to bring extra napkins, knowing that Lucas liked to clean his hands frequently during meals. As Lucas began eating, carefully cutting each bite into identical squares, Robert found himself thinking about the future. He had enough money to ensure his son would never want for anything, but money couldn't buy acceptance or friendship or love. Those things had to be earned through moments like these, with people like Maya who saw past the differences to the sweet, gentle soul underneath. The diner was filling up with the usual Saturday crowd, families with loud, active children, elderly couples sharing newspapers, college students nursing hangovers with coffee and toast. In this mix, Lucas's quiet presence was just another part of the morning rhythm. Robert pulled out his phone to check emails, but Maya caught his attention with a gentle shake of her head. Saturday morning is family time, she had told him once, and he had taken the hint. Business could wait 2 hours a week. Instead, he focused on his son, who was now carefully eating his pancakes while humming a tune under his breath. The humming was new, something that had started about a month ago. Robert wasn't sure what song it was, but Lucas seemed to find comfort in the repetitive melody. As if reading his thoughts, the old jukebox in the corner suddenly came to life. Someone had fed it quarters, and the opening notes of an upbeat pop song filled the diner. Lucas's head snapped up, his eyes brightening with recognition. His humming grew a little louder, matching the rhythm of the music. Robert smiled, making a mental note to ask Maya what song was playing. If it made Lucas happy, maybe he could find it on his phone and play it at home. These small victories, a favorite song, a willing smile, a peaceful meal, had become the measures of a successful day. The morning was unfolding like all the others, comfortable and predictable. Robert had no way of knowing that in just a few minutes, everything was about to change. The familiar opening beats of Happy by Pharrell Williams filled the small diner, and Lucas's entire body seemed to come alive. His fork froze halfway to his mouth, syrup dripping slowly back onto his plate. His eyes grew wide with pure delight, and the quiet humming he'd been doing suddenly matched the song's infectious rhythm perfectly. Robert watched as his son's shoulders began to move, just slightly at first, then with more confidence. Lucas's head bobbed to the beat, and his free hand started tapping against the table in perfect time with the music. This was new. Sure, Lucas had always enjoyed music, but Robert had never seen him respond this strongly to a song before. "Because I'm happy," Lucas sang softly under his breath, his voice barely audible but filled with joy. Robert's heart swelled. His son rarely spoke, let alone sang, but here he was, quietly joining in with the music like any other 8-year-old might do. But as Lucas's movements grew more animated, Robert noticed the familiar shift in the diner's atmosphere. Conversations at nearby tables grew quieter. Heads began to turn. An elderly man in the corner booth lowered his newspaper and stared openly. A young couple with their toddler exchanged glances and whispered something Robert couldn't hear. Lucas was oblivious to the attention. He had abandoned his pancakes entirely now, both hands moving to the rhythm, his whole upper body swaying gently. The song seemed to unlock something inside him that was usually hidden away. For once, he wasn't worried about keeping his movements small or his voice quiet. He was just a boy enjoying his favorite song. "Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth," Lucas sang a little louder, actually clapping his hands together. The pure joy on his face was beautiful, but Robert could feel the weight of staring eyes growing heavier by the second. A woman at the counter turned completely around in her seat to watch. Her expression wasn't cruel exactly, but it wasn't kind either. It was that look Robert knew too well. Confusion mixed with discomfort, the way people looked when they encountered something they didn't understand. Robert's protective instincts kicked in. He reached across the table and gently touched his son's arm. "Lucas, buddy, maybe we should—" "Because I'm happy," Lucas sang again, louder this time, his movements becoming more pronounced. He was rocking back and forth now, his hands flapping with excitement. These were his happy movements, the way his body expressed joy when words weren't enough. The toddler at the nearby table pointed and said loudly, "Mommy, why is that boy doing that?" His mother quickly shushed him, but not before several more heads turned toward their booth. Robert felt his face flush with embarrassment, not for his son, but for the situation. This was exactly why they kept to quiet places, predictable routines, safe spaces where Lucas could be himself without judgment. He was about to suggest they finish breakfast at home when something unexpected happened. Maya appeared at their table, but instead of bringing the check or asking them to quiet down, she did something that left Robert speechless. She started dancing, not just swaying politely or nodding along to the music, but really dancing, moving her whole body to the beat just like Lucas was doing. Her movements were natural and confident, like this was the most normal thing in the world to do on a Saturday morning in a diner. "Because I'm happy," Maya sang along, making eye contact with Lucas and smiling the biggest smile Robert had ever seen on her face. "Clap along if you know what happiness is to you." Lucas's face lit up like Christmas morning. Here was someone who understood. Someone who wasn't asking him to be smaller or quieter or different. Someone who wanted to share his joy instead of silence it. Their dancing wasn't coordinated or choreographed. Maya followed Lucas's lead, mirroring his arm movements and matching his gentle swaying. When he clapped, she clapped. When he spun his hands in small circles, she did the same. They were having a conversation through movement, speaking a language that needed no words. The effect on the diner was immediate and remarkable. The uncomfortable staring stopped. Instead of looking away or whispering, people began to smile. The elderly man who had been staring actually started tapping his foot under the table. The young mother who had shushed her toddler was now grinning, and her little boy was trying to clap along from his high chair. "Because I'm happy," Lucas sang with complete confidence now, his voice clear and strong. Maya harmonized with him, their voices blending together as they danced beside the booth. Robert sat frozen, watching this miracle unfold. His son, who usually shrank away from attention, was glowing with happiness. His movements were big and free and joyful, exactly as they should be. And Maya, this young woman who could have done a dozen other things, had chosen to join his son's celebration instead of ending it. The song was building to its final chorus, and Maya grabbed Lucas's hand, spinning him gently in the small space beside their table. Lucas giggled, a sound Robert heard so rarely that it made his eyes water. They finished the song with their arms raised in triumph, both of them breathing hard and laughing. The diner erupted in spontaneous applause. Not mocking or patronizing applause, but genuine appreciation for the pure joy they had just witnessed. The elderly man was actually whistling. A group of teenagers in the back booth were cheering. Even the cook had come out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron and grinning broadly. Lucas beamed at the response, taking a small bow that made everyone laugh and clap even harder. For this one perfect moment, he wasn't different or special needs or challenging. He was just a happy kid who loved to dance, surrounded by people who appreciated his spirit. Maya helped Lucas back into his seat, both of them still breathing hard from their impromptu performance. "That was amazing, Lucas," she said, her voice warm with genuine admiration. "You're an incredible dancer." Lucas looked at her with pure adoration, then turned to his father with an expression Robert had never seen before. Pride. His son was proud of himself, proud of what he had just done, proud of the joy he had shared with everyone in the room. Robert realized his hands were shaking slightly as he picked up his coffee cup. In 3.5 minutes, everything had changed. The diner felt different now, warmer and more welcoming. The other customers seemed different too, connected by the shared experience of witnessing something beautiful and real. But most importantly, Lucas seemed different. Taller somehow, more confident, like he had discovered something important about himself and the world around him. Maya refilled Robert's coffee, her own hand still slightly trembling from the excitement. "I hope that was okay," she said quietly. "He just looked so happy and I didn't want him to feel like he had to stop." Robert looked at her, this remarkable young woman who had just given his son a gift he hadn't even known Lucas needed. How could he possibly find words to express what this moment meant to him? The applause had faded, and the diner slowly returned to its usual Saturday morning rhythm, but something fundamental had shifted. Lucas sat in his booth, still glowing from his dance performance, carefully cutting his now cold pancakes into perfect squares. He hummed quietly to himself, occasionally looking up at Maya with pure admiration whenever she passed their table. Robert couldn't stop watching his son. In 8 years of fatherhood, he had never seen Lucas so radiant with confidence. The boy who usually made himself as small as possible in public spaces was sitting taller, making eye contact with other customers, even waving shyly when the elderly man from the corner booth smiled at him on his way out. When Maya returned to refill their coffee and chocolate milk, Robert knew he had to say something. This woman had given his son something precious, a moment of complete acceptance, and he couldn't let it pass without acknowledgement. "Maya," he said softly, waiting until she looked at him directly. "What you did just now, I don't think you realize how extraordinary that was." Maya's cheeks flushed pink and she glanced around to make sure no other customers needed attention. "It wasn't extraordinary at all," she said, settling into the booth across from Lucas for just a moment. "He was just being happy. Why would anyone want to stop that?" "Because most people don't understand," Robert replied, his voice thick with emotion. "They see his movements, his stimming, his differences, and they get uncomfortable. They want him to be quieter, stiller, more like other kids. But you joined him. You celebrated with him." Lucas looked up from his pancakes at the sound of his father's voice, sensing the serious tone of the conversation. Maya reached over and gently straightened one of his perfectly arranged sugar packets, a gesture that made the boy smile. "My little brother Danny is 15 now," Maya said quietly, her eyes still on Lucas. "He has Down syndrome. I've watched people stare at him his whole life, watched them whisper and point and make assumptions about what he can and can't do. But Danny is the most joyful person I know. When he's happy, his whole body shows it, just like Lucas did today. Why should he hide that? Why should anyone hide their joy?" Robert felt something click into place. Maya's natural ease with Lucas, her instinctive understanding of his needs, her complete lack of judgment. It all made sense now. She had grown up loving someone the world often misunderstood. "Where is Danny now?" Robert asked, genuinely curious about this young woman's life. "He lives with our parents back in Oregon," Maya replied, a wistful smile crossing her face. "I miss him every single day. He sends me videos of himself dancing to his favorite songs. Terrible quality, but they're the best part of my week." Lucas had finished eating and was now lining up his utensils with mathematical precision. Maya watched him work, her expression soft with understanding. "You know," she continued, "when I first started working here and met you two, Lucas reminded me so much of Danny. The way he needs things to be just right, the way he finds comfort in routines, the way he lights up when he's truly happy. It's beautiful, not something to be fixed or hidden." Robert leaned back in his booth studying this remarkable young woman. He had built a successful business by reading people, by recognizing talent and potential others might miss. Right now, every instinct he had was telling him that Maya was someone special, someone who could make a real difference in the world. "What are you studying?" he asked, though he had picked up bits and pieces over the months. "Nursing," Maya replied, her voice taking on a different quality, excited but tired. "I'm in my second year at the community college. It's tough working here full-time and taking classes, but I'm determined to finish." "What kind of nursing do you want to do?" Maya's entire face changed, lighting up with passion and purpose. "Pediatric nursing, specifically working with kids who have developmental disabilities and special needs. There's such a shortage of healthcare workers who really understand these kids, who know how to communicate with them and make them feel safe." She paused, watching Lucas arrange his napkin into a perfect triangle. Most medical professionals see Danny and immediately focus on what's wrong with him, what needs to be fixed or managed. But there are some nurses, some doctors, who see him first as Danny, funny, loving, creative Danny, and then work with his differences instead of against them. Those are the people who change lives. Robert felt a chill run down his spine. Here was a young woman with the exact combination of natural empathy and professional ambition that could transform healthcare for kids like Lucas. And she was stuck working double shifts at a diner, struggling to afford an education that would let her help countless families. "How much longer do you have in school?" he asked. Maya's expression dimmed slightly. "Well, that's complicated. I should graduate next spring, but..." She trailed off, looking embarrassed. "But what?" "My car died last month," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The repair costs more than the car is worth, and I can't afford a new one. I've been taking 3 buses to get to work and school, which means I can only work 1 shift instead of 2 on weekdays. Without that extra income, I might have to take next semester off to save up money. Robert's businessman brain immediately started calculating. Maya was one semester away from becoming exactly the kind of healthcare professional his son desperately needed. She had the heart, the understanding, the motivation, and the intelligence. The only thing stopping her was money. And after graduation, he pressed gently. "What's your plan?" "The Children's Hospital downtown has a program for new graduates," Maya said, her voice regaining some of its enthusiasm. "They train you specifically for pediatric special needs care. It's exactly what I want to do, but it's competitive. They only take 12 new nurses each year." Lucas had grown restless during their conversation and had started humming again, the same tune from earlier. Maya automatically began humming along with him, their voices creating a soft harmony that made other customers smile as they passed. Robert watched this unconscious interaction and felt certainty settle in his chest. Maya wasn't just kind to Lucas. She connected with him on a level that seemed almost magical. She anticipated his needs, understood his communication style, and brought out his best self without even trying. "Maya," Robert said slowly, his mind racing with possibilities, "what if I told you there might be another way?" She looked at him curiously, still humming softly with Lucas. "Another way to what?" "To finish school. To get that position at the Children's Hospital. To become the kind of nurse who changes lives." Maya stopped humming and gave Robert her full attention. There was something in his tone, something serious and hopeful that made her lean forward slightly. "I'm not sure I understand," she said carefully. Robert glanced at his son, who was now drawing invisible patterns on the table with his finger, completely content in his own world. This conversation was about to change all their lives, and Lucas didn't even know it yet. "What if someone wanted to invest in your future?" Robert said quietly. "What if someone believed that helping you become the nurse you're meant to be was worth whatever it cost?" Maya stared at Robert across the table, trying to process his words. The diner noise seemed to fade into the background as she struggled to understand what he was suggesting. Lucas continued his quiet humming, completely unaware that his father was about to change someone's entire future. "I'm sorry," Maya said slowly, "but I think I misunderstood. Did you just ask about investing in my future?" Robert took a deep breath. He had made countless business deals, pitched to investors, negotiated million-dollar contracts, but this conversation felt more important than all of those combined. This wasn't about profit margins or market share. This was about the kind of person who would dance with his son when the world wanted him to be quiet. "Let me ask you something first," Robert said, leaning forward slightly. "If money wasn't an issue, if you could finish school without worrying about rent or car payments or working double shifts, what would you do after graduation?" Maya's eyes grew distant as she considered the question. "I'd apply for that pediatric program at Children's Hospital. I'd spend every spare moment learning everything I could about helping kids like Lucas, like Danny. I'd become the kind of nurse who makes doctor visits less scary, who speaks their language, who sees their potential instead of their limitations." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, filled with passion and determination. "I'd work with families, help them understand their children better, advocate for kids who can't always advocate for themselves. She trailed off, looking embarrassed. "Sorry, I get carried away when I talk about this." "Don't apologize," Robert said firmly. "That passion, that vision, that's exactly what I'm talking about." He glanced around the diner, making sure their conversation remained private. The Saturday crowd had thinned out, and most remaining customers were absorbed in their own breakfast conversations. "Maya, I want to pay for the rest of your education," Robert said quietly but clearly. "Tuition, books, living expenses, everything. I want to make sure you can focus on becoming the nurse you're meant to be without worrying about money." The color drained from Maya's face. She sat perfectly still for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. "Mr. Chen, that's incredibly generous, but I can't accept something like that. I barely know you. You know me well enough to dance with my son when other people were staring," Robert replied. "You know me well enough to treat Lucas like any other child instead of a problem to be managed. In 15 minutes today, you showed me more about your character than most people reveal in years." Maya's hands were trembling slightly as she reached for her coffee cup. "But this is too much. Do you have any idea how much nursing school costs? How much I'd owe you?" "You wouldn't owe me anything," Robert said. "This isn't a loan. It's an investment in something I believe in. Lucas looked up from his drawings, sensing the serious energy at the table. He reached over and patted Maya's hand gently, the way she had straightened his sugar packets earlier. The simple gesture made her eyes fill with tears. "I don't understand," Maya whispered. "Why would you do this for someone you hardly know?" Robert was quiet for a moment, watching his son return to his invisible art. 3 years ago, Lucas's mother left us. She couldn't handle his diagnosis. Couldn't accept that our son would never be the picture-perfect child she'd imagined. I was angry for a long time, angry at her, angry at the world, angry at circumstances I couldn't control. His voice grew softer. But then I realized something. There are two kinds of people in this world when it comes to kids like Lucas. There are people who see the differences and walk away, and there are people who see the differences and step closer. Today you stepped closer. You celebrated with him instead of silencing him. Maya wiped her eyes with her napkin, trying to compose herself. "But this is too big. I could never repay something like this, even if you say it's not a loan." "You're right," Robert agreed. "You couldn't repay it, not in money, but you could pay it forward. Every child you help, every family you support, every time you advocate for a kid who needs someone in their corner, that's how you'd repay it." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. Lucas at his 8th birthday party, sitting alone while other children played around him. This was 2 months ago. "Look at his face," Maya studied the image. Lucas looked small and isolated, overwhelmed by the noise and activity around him. "Now look at him today," Robert continued, gesturing toward his son, who was humming contentedly while organizing the remaining sugar packets into a complex pattern. The difference was striking. The boy in the diner was confident, happy, engaged with the world around him. That transformation happened because one person decided to meet him where he was instead of asking him to be somewhere else, Robert explained. "Imagine what you could do with proper training, with the right resources, with the time and energy to focus completely on learning." Maya looked at Lucas, then back at Robert. "I still don't understand why you'd trust me with something this important." "Because I've been in business for 15 years, and I've learned to recognize potential when I see it," Robert said. "You have something that can't be taught in any classroom. Genuine compassion combined with natural understanding. Those textbooks can teach you medical procedures and treatment protocols, but they can't teach you to see the person behind the condition." Lucas had finished his sugar packet arrangement and was now looking expectantly at Maya, as if waiting for her approval of his work. "That's beautiful." "Lucas," she said automatically, and the boy beamed with pride. Robert smiled. "See, you do that without even thinking about it. You validate him, encourage him, treat him with respect. Do you know how rare that is?" Maya was quiet for a long time, clearly wrestling with the magnitude of what was being offered. Finally, she spoke. "What if I fail? What if I'm not as good as you think I am? What if I can't live up to your expectations?" "Then you'll have tried," Robert said simply. "But I don't think you'll fail. I think you'll exceed every expectation, including your own." He leaned back in the booth, giving her space to think. "I'm not asking for an answer right now. This is a big decision. Take some time. Talk it over with your family if you want. But Maya, please don't say no just because it seems too good to be true. Sometimes good things happen to good people." Lucas had grown restless during the serious conversation and was starting to make soft sounds that indicated he was ready to leave. Robert recognized the signs. They had been here longer than usual, and his son's routine was being disrupted. "We should probably go," Robert said, reaching for his wallet. "But I meant what I said. Think about it." Maya stood up slowly, still looking dazed. "Mr. Chen, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it," Robert replied, leaving enough money on the table to cover their breakfast and a generous tip. "And Maya, call me Robert. If we're going to change lives together, we should probably be on a first-name basis." As they prepared to leave, Lucas surprised everyone by turning to Maya and giving her a gentle hug. It was spontaneous and brief, but incredibly meaningful. Lucas rarely initiated physical contact with anyone outside his immediate family. Maya hugged him back carefully, understanding instinctively that this was Lucas's way of saying thank you for the dance, for the acceptance, for seeing him as more than his diagnosis. "Thank you for dancing with me today, Lucas," she whispered. "You're an amazing dancer." Lucas smiled shyly and took his father's hand, ready to head home to the familiar comfort of their Saturday afternoon routine. As they walked toward the door, Robert turned back one more time. "Maya, the offer stands whenever you're ready." But don't wait too long. There are a lot of kids out there who need someone like you. 2.5 years later, Maya walked through the familiar halls of Children's Hospital wearing scrubs decorated with tiny dancing bears. Her badge read Maya Rodriguez, RN, Pediatric Special Needs Unit, and every time she looked at it, she still felt a surge of disbelief and gratitude. The nursing station was buzzing with the usual morning activity. Charts needed updating, medications required preparation, and families were arriving for appointments that could change their children's lives forever. Maya had learned to navigate this world with confidence, but she never forgot where her journey had truly begun. "Maya, room 314 is asking for you specifically," called Janet, the head nurse. "The Williamson family. Their son Tommy has autism, and apparently he's been asking about the nurse who likes to dance." Maya smiled, remembering her first week on the job when she had helped calm a frightened 7-year-old by moving to the rhythm of his favorite song. Word had spread quickly among the staff and families that Maya had a special way of connecting with children who saw the world differently. "I'll head over now," Maya replied, grabbing Tommy's chart. As she walked down the hallway, she thought about how much had changed since that Saturday morning in the diner when Robert first made his incredible offer. She had spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about his proposal, calling her parents in Oregon, talking it over with Danny during their weekly video chat. Her little brother had been the one to finally convince her. "Maya," Danny had said in his direct, honest way, "if someone wants to help you help other kids like me, why would you say no? That's just silly." When she finally called Robert to accept, she had been terrified and excited in equal measure. True to his word, he had handled everything. Tuition payments, living expenses, even a reliable used car so she could focus entirely on her studies instead of juggling multiple jobs. But Robert had given her more than financial support. He and Lucas had become like family to her. Their Saturday morning diner tradition had continued throughout her final year of school, and Maya often joined them when her schedule allowed. She watched Lucas grow from a shy 8-year-old into a confident 10-year-old, who loved showing her his latest drawings and proudly telling her about his achievements in his special education program. Robert had been there for her graduation, sitting in the front row with Lucas, both of them cheering louder than anyone else when she walked across the stage. The photo from that day sat on her desk at the nursing station, Robert, Lucas, and Maya all beaming with pride and joy. "Miss Maya," Tommy called out as soon as she entered his room. He was a small boy with bright eyes and an infectious grin, despite the medical equipment surrounding his bed. "Mom said you might come see me." "Of course I came to see you," Maya said, settling into the chair beside his bed. "I heard you've been asking about dancing nurses." Tommy's mother, Linda, looked exhausted in the way only parents of special needs children understood. Maya recognized that expression from countless families she had worked with. The mixture of love, worry, and bone-deep fatigue that came from advocating for your child every single day. "He's been having a rough morning," Linda explained quietly. "The blood draw didn't go well, and he's scheduled for an MRI this afternoon. He's been asking for someone who understands why he needs to move when he's nervous." Maya nodded, understanding immediately. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her playlist until she found a gentle, rhythmic song that often helped anxious children. "Tommy, do you want to show me how you like to move when you hear music?" she asked, starting the song at low volume. The transformation was immediate. Tommy's tense shoulders relaxed, and he began the subtle swaying movements that helped his nervous system self-regulate. Maya joined in, moving her hands in time with his, creating a calm, shared rhythm in the sterile hospital room. "This is how I feel better," Tommy said softly, his movements becoming more fluid as the music continued. "I know," Maya replied. "Moving to music is like telling your body it's safe to relax." Linda watched with tears in her eyes. "I've been trying to explain this to doctors for years. They always want him to sit still, be quiet, stop stimming. But you get it." Maya continued the gentle movement with Tommy while she spoke to his mother.
"Has anyone talked to you about the MRI?
"We can arrange for him to listen to music during the scan, and I can teach him some movement techniques that work even when he has to lie still." For the next 20 minutes, Maya worked with Tommy and his mother, preparing them for the afternoon procedure with techniques she had learned not just in nursing school, but from years of watching Lucas navigate medical appointments. She knew how to make the scary seem manageable how to honor a child's needs while working within medical requirements. When she finally left Tommy's room, Maya found Robert waiting by the elevator just like he did every few weeks when he visited the hospital. "How's he doing?" Robert asked, genuinely interested in each child Maya told him about. "Much better. He'll be fine for the MRI this afternoon." Maya paused, looking at this man who had changed her entire life. "Robert, I got some news yesterday. The hospital wants to expand the special needs unit. They're asking me to help design the training program for new nurses." Robert's face lit up with pride. "That's incredible. But are you surprised? You've transformed how this unit operates in less than 2 years." It was true. Maya's approach to pediatric special needs care had become the gold standard at Children's Hospital. She had developed protocols that other hospitals were starting to adopt, written training materials that were being used in nursing schools, and most importantly, she had changed how an entire medical team thought about children with disabilities. "There's something else," Maya continued as they walked toward the parking garage. "They want to create a scholarship program for nursing students who want to specialize in this field." They asked if I knew anyone who might want to fund something like that. Robert stopped walking and turned to face her, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You know, I might know someone who'd be interested in that kind of investment." 6 months later, the Lucas Chen Scholarship for Pediatric Special Needs Nursing was announced. The program would provide full educational support for 5 nursing students each year, with the only requirement being a demonstrated commitment to serving children with developmental disabilities. Maya stood at the podium during the scholarship announcement, looking out at an audience filled with families, medical professionals, and nursing students. In the front row sat Robert and Lucas, now 11 years old and thriving in his new middle school program. "This scholarship exists because a little boy taught me that joy is meant to be shared. Not hidden," Maya began, her voice strong and clear. "It exists because his father understood that investing in compassion creates ripples that reach far beyond what we can imagine." She found Robert's eyes in the audience. 2.5 years ago, I was a struggling nursing student who almost gave up on her dreams. Today, I stand here as someone who gets to help families navigate some of their most challenging moments. But more than that, I get to help them celebrate their children's unique gifts and find reasons for hope. Lucas was beaming from his seat, occasionally making the small hand movements that still helped him process excitement. Maya continued her speech, but part of her attention was on that remarkable boy who had started this entire journey by simply being himself in a small diner on a Saturday morning. The first scholarship recipients will start their studies next fall, Maya concluded. And someday they'll help children dance through their fears, sing through their medical procedures, and move through this world knowing they're accepted exactly as they are. After the ceremony, families approached Maya with questions. Students inquired about the scholarship program, and hospital administrators discussed expanding the initiative to other medical centers. But the moment that mattered most came when Lucas walked up to her, now tall enough to almost reach her shoulder, and said clearly, "Thank you for dancing with me." "Miss Maya, thank you for helping other kids dance too." Maya hugged him tightly, remembering that first Saturday morning when she had made a simple choice to join a child's celebration instead of silencing it. She had no way of knowing then that this one moment of kindness would transform not just her own life, but the lives of countless children and families who would benefit from the compassion that rippled outward from one dance in a small diner. Sometimes the most extraordinary changes begin with the smallest gestures of human connection. Sometimes all it takes is someone willing to step closer instead of walking away.